Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Michael.
And I'm Molly.
We have two very memorable episodes to cover today. So, we are covering episode 5 of Survivor 48, which featured a very emotional moment, a couple of, I would say, very emotional moments. And then we have a record breaking finale to cover of Deal or No Deal Island. We covered the start of the season. We figured now that we have a very talked about finale that just happened this past week, we would come back to it, check back in, and talk about everything that's happened since we last covered it. So, a lot to get to. Molly, are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Well, let's get started then with Survivor 48. So, after last night's tribal council, Kyle explains to the tribe that he noticed someone had gone through his bag, so he got a little sketched out and decided to play his idol. And I thought this was a good cover because obviously we know that Kyle and Camilla are pretending to not be as close as they actually are, and they did a great job of that. I mean, Oscar worthy acting, and it worked. But do you think that this was enough now that they've kind of should have been exposed based on last week's vote? Do you think that this was enough to kind of cover their bases and potentially continue to let the rest of the tribe think that they're not as close as they really are?
Yeah, I think right now it makes sense. Like there wouldn't like that's a valid reason for Kyle to want to play his idol. And like at this point I don't think there's much else to go off of, so I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I thought this was really smart because it is very possible that, they put back things in the bag in places where they weren't the first time. And so he could have very easily noticed, like, hey, I put that over here. And I thought that was a really smart way because obviously Camilla told him that they were going through his bag, but the rest of them don't necessarily know that Camilla routed them out for that. So the fact that he would use that of like, hey, I kind of noticed that something was a little off and got sketched out and decided to use my idol to play it safe, I thought was a really smart thing. And they don't necessarily need to know that he used his extra vote. We didn't even realize that he had until he admitted it. A lot of people ended that episode thinking that he didn't use it. So very possible that they would get away with not knowing that he ever had that, and it was just the idol. And yeah, I think this was a really smart way to play it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, like to see how long. I mean, obviously now we know that they're still acting, but they aren't close. Like how long they can keep that up, and also when they get to the merge, which is happening next week, right?
Murgatory is happening next week.
Purgatory.
Yeah, so it's
So
like kind of I don't know whether we still consider that pre-merge or not, but yeah, they'll all be together on one beach.
yeah, so it's like, is anyone else gonna say like from their tribe, like, oh, they're actually close to
Right.
those people, like from to Joe and to Shaheen? Like, I don't know how that's gonna go.
Yeah, I think that's the question is will the rest of the original Siva tribe kind of rat them out for lying about that? But I don't I also don't necessarily know that it wasn't like Kyle and Camilla were like an obvious duo on the original Siva tribe. Like they were close, but I mean maybe we just didn't see enough because they never went to tribal. But it felt like from what we did see that I do think that they could get away with like because they never explicitly said like yeah we hate each other like we were like mortal enemies like that would be an obvious thing that they could say that wasn't true
Yeah.
but I feel like they covered their base enough kind of like just hinting at things that they weren't close but like not outwardly like saying anything that would get them caught up in a lie. So I don't know, like there could definitely be I think that they could definitely be caught in like a way of the other people saying like no, like they seem kind of close, like where people would make them question it, but I don't know. I think that'll be really fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, then we get right into the reward challenge, which was the first hint to me that like, whoa, we are getting quick. Like we're not seeing the rest of the tribes before. We're like going straight into reward, which I guess we haven't had many other like, simply just reward challenges. So maybe, that was why, because we actually had two challenges in this episode. But went straight into it. The challenge is throwing sandbags at a rotating target until you release a bag of balls. One at a time, bounce those balls on a trampoline into a net basket. Once all three balls are landed, roll them into three separate targets. So, first place tribe gets to go to the sanctuary where good things happen for an afternoon of pastries. Second place will get those same pastries, a smaller selection, but they will have to enjoy those back at camp. And then last place, of course, gets nothing. So Logi ends up winning this challenge and going to the sanctuary, and Vula places second. So after that challenge is when things kind of get a little interesting because Jeff asks Mary what she thinks of, them winning the challenge, and she is really happy, of course. Like the whole tribe is celebrating and they're excited for their reward. And then he asks Say what she thinks about the reaction, the celebration, and Say is very honest. Say says that she thinks that they should be a little bit less overly excited and more. Do you remember the exact words that she says here?
Oh, I forget what she exactly said, but yeah, she wasn't so happy that
That
she.
people should be more careful with their words, something to that
Yeah,
effect.
yeah.
What did you think of that?
I don't think Say should have mentioned that in that moment. Like, obviously, it wasn't like we see them going back to camp and talking about it and like having other people in their tribe noticing that and thinking of Say in a different light now that she voiced her opinion like that, being upset with Mary and being with Mary being so excited about it. So I don't know. I feel like at that point, like you just say, okay, good for you. Like don't try to go more into it and show that you're even more upset than you need to like express it.
Yeah, I think that Say is just that type of person who feels like she's being fake if she's not always saying what she's thinking.
Yeah.
And to me, there's such a difference between like being fake and saying like, "Oh no, I am so happy for you." Like that may be a little bit fake. But like just kind of, keeping it cute, like not, being like, congrats, I understand that you're excited, of course anyone would be, that type of thing. Like there's just no reason to like put that spotlight on yourself and reacting in that way and starting that type of controversy because they know that the merge is about to happen. And having somebody who has then, kind of, I don't know about offended, but like rubbed so many people on the wrong way at this point is somebody who I think is going to be very hard to work with. Like it's sure it's somebody who's going to be a target before you, so that's one way to think about it. But the other way is if you're trying to like be a strong, united tribe, I think having someone like Say who has proven herself to be a little bit unpredictable, you can't always trust that she's gonna say the right things at the right time, is a little bit dangerous to work with. So I can kind of see it both ways of how someone on her tribe might think of it, but I just feel like it's not worth the risk.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's worth it. I mean, like obviously she's hungry, she wants the reward too. So I think part of it could have been acting out of her own hunger
Yeah,
also and jealousy with that, but it's still not a good look.
for sure. Well, then we go to the Siva tribe, and Mitch and Bianca discuss voting out Say because, like we said, she's causing too much chaos to be able to work with her come the merge. Say tells Cedric that she wants to get rid of Chrissy because Chrissy is too controlling. Chrissy is telling her what to eat, when she can eat, and she doesn't like that. So Chrissy is kind of Say's new target, and it seems like Say always has someone who she is targeting, whether it's Mary now that has moved over to Chrissy. What were your thoughts on that, and which, at this point, thinking if they go to tribal, which side would the Mitch and Bianca, targeting Say or Say or Chrissy, which kind of did you feel like which direction was gonna go?
I felt like it was probably gonna go more to Say's direction at this point. Like I don't think with saying that Chrissy was just controlling, like I don't think that's enough of an argument there to vote someone out at this point. Like I think that Mitch and Bianca wanting to vote out Say made more sense just because of her not knowing how obviously we're saying like we don't know how she's gonna react or what she's gonna say all the time. And so, like with that kind of person, it's obviously not the most ideal person to work with in Survivor. So I think it would have made more sense for them to go to Say.
Yeah, I kind of thought so too, because I mean, we saw that Bianca really wanted to work with Say, like they had become pretty close, but I feel like Bianca at that point was just like grasping onto whatever she could.
Yeah.
And I think that, if Mitch and Chrissy say like, hey, vote with us, we're not going to target you, like she would have happily just said, yep. And we see later on that she kind of ends up being in this swing position for a bit, but when they thought she had a vote to
Yeah.
swing. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's a better argument to vote out Say. I feel like there's just more proof, like that. Hey, this person has done all of this that we have all witnessed her say and do.
Yeah.
That whereas Chrissy, it's more like okay, that's a little bit of a personal problem. So yeah, I agree. I think at this point that was kind of my thought was I think Say may be in trouble here.
Yeah.
Well, then we go over to Logie, who, as we said, won the reward challenge. So they're at the sanctuary. And first thing we see is that David is beyond excited to see Milk at this reward challenge. And we get the music of a family visit almost, it was like. I mean, David was over the moon, so excited to see Milk. Molly, what are your thoughts on Milk?
I love Milk. I was happy for David in that moment. I was like, wow, I understand it. I mean, not maybe the extent to what he was feeling, but I do really like Milk, and I drink it pretty regularly, so I like Milk.
Now, are you whole milk or 2%?
Recently, I've been drinking more whole.
Oh,
I mixed
interesting.
it for like overnight oats, so I don't really drink it
Ah,
straight. So if I'm drinking it straight, I'd probably prefer the 2%
yeah.
milk. But
I agree, and that's where my discrepancy with David is that I am a 2%. I think that whole milk is a little bit too thick, a little bit too creamy, and I prefer 2%. But I do like milk, so I could understand David's excitement over milk. But yeah, when he started talking down on 2%, then he lost me a little bit.
yeah, we have to have a talk with him
Yeah,
to show him the love of 2% also.
yeah, definitely. Well, also at this sanctuary, less important things happening. Eva says that she doesn't trust Charity, and she thinks that Charity is fake. Now, I thought this was very interesting because this is not the first time someone has said this about Charity, and we have seen on the previous Siva tribe, where Charity was originally, that there were other people saying kind of the same thing about Charity. I mean, we saw this with I can't remember who it was that in the very first episode was talking about Charity. It was Camilla, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah.
That Camilla was just like immediately had this weird feeling about Charity. She didn't trust her. And I'm curious, is that the vibe you get from Charity, or do you understand where people have been coming from when they're saying that about her, or does this seem kind of out of the blue?
I feel like we haven't gotten to see a ton of her, so I don't know what they're basing it off of that makes them think that she's being fake. So I don't know. From my perspective, I don't really see it, but also we're not there living with them on the island, so we obviously don't have all the information that we could. So I'm not sure, but I don't know much about her, I feel like, at this point either.
Yeah. So you haven't been watching the live feeds? No.
We don't get those, unfortunately.
No, I agree. I think that this feels like it's out of nowhere from what we've seen, but it just can't be. Like two people on completely different tribes. Like Eva and Camilla have nothing to do with each other, and they are saying the same things about Charity. And I feel like David, we saw kind of say similar things, like Charity's egotistical, thinks she's running things, and thinks she's really close to David. We saw that I think when they first swapped tribes. And Charity was saying like, yeah, David will do whatever I say, and then we see David on the other end saying like, no, I want I want Charity out of there.
Yeah.
So I feel like there has to be something that we're missing, but I feel like just, I mean, I said live feeds, but like from Big Brother, like we've seen in the past where people oftentimes, like, if we had no live feeds, we would have thought that Taylor Hale was like the worst person to walk the earth. Like, we would have, from just, if we were going by what people were saying about her, we would have thought like, what did she do to cause this? And we would have just assumed that it was something. But because we have the live feeds, we know in fact that it really was nothing. So I'm a little bit always afraid to just kind of assume that everybody else is right, and like, just because multiple people are saying it. But it is strange to me that it's two very separate. So it wasn't like it was just kind of this mob mentality of thinking about her. Like it was just two very distinct people, more than that. But that's interesting to me. But I'm curious now that when we do merge next week, whether that comes to fruition. And I feel like Charity, I could see her being a little bit in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is definitely maybe setting that up for some more conversations. We'll see next week.
For sure. Well, then we go over to Vula, and while they're enjoying their reward back at camp, the tribe bonds over talking about their family histories, and they share very emotional, raw stories about their families, and I thought this was a great, great moment. And this to me was the pinnacle of why 90-minute episodes are so great of Survivor, because this is something that would have 100% been cut if it was just an hour-long episode. This was not game related, really. Maybe we would have gotten just like a very short segment of it, but not nearly to the extent that we did. And I just love the fact that, I mean, I think I said this last week, that like it's we used to get so many moments like in the early 40s of Survivor where it was like just kind of taking you out of the game, showing you like the back history of somebody. And now I think moments like this are so perfect because this was organic. This was them just getting to know each other. And now we get to watch them get to know each other, and we get to know them, and then we care more about them and we're more invested. And this also kind of could affect the game, because if they decide to stick together and come next week as a tribe, then that was a moment that potentially did really affect the game. So it's great that we got to see it, and it kind of served multiple purposes.
Yeah. No, I like the 90 minutes, especially for this reason as well, because it's like, well, we get to actually know the players better and like feel like more connected with them on a
Yeah.
personal level just because of their stories they can share.
Yeah, definitely. Like I feel like that's what's so great about Big Brother when you do watch the live feeds, is that you get to know them so closely and spend so much time with them and hear so much about who they are, that very early on in the season you feel so connected to them. And I think we've seen it with the challenge 90-minute episodes also have really helped the last few seasons, I think, in terms of just like making it not so just challenge heavy, and we get to see more of the back at the house content, and same on Survivor, that we get to see so much more of the camp life. And yeah, I just think that it really helps that I feel so much more connected to these last few casts since we've had the 90-minute episodes than I did for a long time when it was just 60-minute episodes and it was so strategy and challenge heavy. So yeah, I loved this moment.
Yeah.
Well, then we get to the immunity challenge, and we see that the challenge is that the castaways leap into the ocean and swim to shore while pulling a boat containing a chest. They then carry the chest up to the beach and work together to unbraid three long ropes, releasing a key. Use the key to unlock the boat and collect balls inside. Dig under a log, and when they all reach the other side of that log, each tribe member is responsible for maneuvering one ball through a table maze. So Vula wins, Logie comes in second, and Siva is then going to tribal. But with Logie, before Logie won, there was a very emotional moment where Eva was having a very difficult time with the table maze. She was the last one going for Logie. It was all on her shoulders to get them the win, and she does end up pulling it out. But she got very, very frustrated. You could see that she had an episode. And after she finishes, she gets very overwhelmed. She starts screaming, and people are trying to comfort her. But it's really when Joe goes to comfort her, because Joe, of course, knows about her autism and nobody else does. So it's really, he knows what to do. She's told him what to do in this situation. And so Jeff gives Joe permission to go over to comfort her. And oh my God, I mean, I started tearing up a bit watching this. This was such an emotional moment. And Eva tells everyone about her story, and Jeff even gets emotional here, and it's just such a moment. What did you think of that?
I know, it was so great. I felt like something had to happen with Joe and Eva, just the way that they were editing it to show Joe watching Eva while she was finishing up. Like it was such like a overarching, just like a wholesome moment that it was great to see that. Like I mean, obviously they're still working together, they're still gonna be together throughout the game, but this just felt like a really, really like a bigger moment than just the game. Of course, like everyone watching back home or like sharing stories of if they have kids watching it with if they have autism, like they're showing like that this was a touching moment for them, just like showing that their kids could do it too, or like all that kind of stuff that there's the support there and that awareness there is also really great for the world to see. So it's really great to have that shown in Survivor this episode. So I feel like it was just all around a really great time, a really great moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this to me just like, and I mean, Jeff even kind of said this, that this shows just like how far Survivor has come, I think, because in the early seasons, if something like this had happened, I really don't think that they would have handled it as carefully and as well as they did here. I think I don't know. I just think that they would have moved on and just like taken it as somebody having a hard time with the challenge and not really stopped to really consider what was going on and that this was a part of, of her autism and her journey. And I just think that the way that they handled it now was really perfect, it felt like. And the fact that they gave it the airtime that it deserved and showed Eva really being able to tell her story, allowing Joe to comfort her. Like even in the early seasons, like I don't know, maybe they would have said, no, Joe, you're on a different tribe. You don't get to go over and be a part of this. I don't know. Maybe they would have, but I just feel like there were opportunities in the past for Survivor to handle certain things that they didn't always handle in the best way. And now I feel like this shows that they've really learned a lot and they allowed it to be handled the way that it should have.
Oh yeah, very much so.
And I hope that people who can relate to Eva's story were able to get something out of this as well. It'd be that, that a lot of people are in Eva's position who watch the show, I'm sure, and have had moments like that. And I hope that seeing that on TV, seeing somebody who they can relate to was a happy moment for them that make them feel less alone.
Yes, definitely.
Well, then we go over to Loggy and after the challenge, and everyone is commending Eva for opening up, and they're all very supportive of her. And Star, I mean, Eva and Star have had a contentious relationship back on the original Loggy, and even this was, a moment that Star was able to finally connect with Eva. It felt like, and this was a real turning point for their relationship. So, I think that could be very interesting next week when they're all back together, original Logie, and that relationship has changed since they last saw it, and I think that could warrant a very interesting dynamic there. But Star then opens up herself and tells the tribe that she has the Beware advantage that Eva knew that she had, but Star had been lying to her about it ever until now. So Eva actually is able to crack the code and gets the idol. And now this is technically still Star's idol, but Star gives it to her. Star gives the idol to Eva. I mean, look how far they've come in just today.
Yeah.
What did you think of that decision by Star?
I was shocked, but also it was a nice moment to see just because then it really did show that Star was trying to work with Eva and Eva was the one to figure out the code. So I guess it makes sense. I mean, and also the entire tribe knows that she has it. So at this point, like, I don't know how beneficial that idol will be because it's not like a hidden idol like Kyle had that no one knew he had it besides Camilla, obviously. But on that drive, like no one knew that Kyle had that idol. Here, everyone knows Eva has this idol, and I feel like that's going to be kind of a common knowledge across when they get to the Murgatory as well. I don't think this tribe is going to hide it from everyone else. So it's obviously a great move for. I mean, in general, like for building that trust with someone for Star to give it to Eva, but I don't know how useful this exact idol is going to be.
Yeah, it'll definitely be very interesting because they clearly are not going to be able to keep this a secret. And I mean, everyone on the original Augie knew that Star had the beware advantage at least. So I'm sure that's going to get discussed. Of hey, were you ever able to find that? So I'm sure that that will be a big topic of conversation. But I think it'll be really interesting because Joe and Eva's relationship has been talked about as being too close, and I'm sure as emotional and as great as that moment was at the last challenge, that I'm sure is a red flag at the back of people's heads of being like, Joe and Eva clearly are a duo that needs to be broken up at some point. So knowing that now one of them has an idol is going to make that a little bit more complicated of either having to completely blindside both of them or potentially just flushing it at one point and then going from there. So I think that that will complicate things quite a bit because I was worried for Eva, especially. I think that Eva probably would have been the first one that they would have taken out because I feel like Joe has probably made closer relationships with certain people. Although I guess Thomas was one of those and he's gone, so who knows now. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how this will play out.
Yes, me too. But I'm happy that she has it.
Yeah, me too. I think that I hope my my worry here for Star and for Star updates as well. I mean, that's what I'm really concerned about here. But Star, I am a little bit afraid. What if Eva gets Star out using her own idol?
Yeah, that would be wild.
Like that, I feel like that could very well happen. That Star will say, I'm in trouble. I need you to use this idol on me. Or, Eva gets the most votes and Star gets the second most votes, and Eva is safe, and Star goes home just getting a couple votes just because Eva used that idol that technically was Star's. I can see it right now. I can see that happening, and that would be quite a thing to happen.
Yep. Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, we will. Well, then we go over to Siva, who is going to tribal council this week. Bianca's plan is, I think, a very smart one. That she decides that she needs to pit the two sides, so Chrissy and Mitch on one side, Say and Cedric on the other, pit them against each other by telling each side that she is willing to work with them, and then the vote will end up tied with 2 votes each on each side because neither side at this point knows that Bianca doesn't have a vote, so they think they each have Bianca's vote to make it 3 and make it a majority. But in the end, it'll actually end up being a tie. Then at that point, the vote can only be for Chrissy or Say, being the 2 that allegedly will get votes here. So then Bianca's safe, even though everybody that at that point is pissed because they realize there was only 4 votes. That Bianca they can't do anything about it at that tribal specifically. So I think that was a really smart plan originally, and it kind of gets a little complicated here when Mitch and Christy try to loop Cedric in, and they think they have him, but then Cedric tells Bianca, "Actually, I'm still voting for Christy." So things get a little bit complicated. But what did you think of that original plan from Bianca?
I thought that was smart because I mean it's not going to be targeting Bianca at that point. Like if you can get both sides to trust you and then just put them against each other, then like that would work.
Yeah, I think that it's really smart, assuming that next week is Murgatory, which it is, and
Yeah.
so they're right. But assuming that they're not just gonna come back to camp and have another vote potentially with just the 4 of them, and now Bianca, everyone knows that Bianca lied to them. And I mean, even going into Murgatory though, like these Bianca still has now 3 people who are probably looking at her like, "Hey, you completely screwed all 3 of us over." So it's one of those things where it's like you just got to get to the next day, and you have to worry about that later, I guess. But I think that Bianca got a little bit too paranoid, thinking like, is there a way that I can do this without getting everyone mad at me? And so that's when she, of course, then goes and tells Cedric, hey, I don't have a vote actually. So I think that was her way of being like, please stick to the plan. Like, you're not in danger this week. I'm just telling you this so that tomorrow you will, like, I was honest with at least you. And potentially can still work with you moving forward. So I can completely see where Bianca was coming from, but I think that she got a little bit too dangerous with it. Like she just should have focused on getting through this tribal and worrying about the rest of it tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. That was definitely a mistake on her part because she was safe, like no one was going for her. But then her sharing that information with Cedric that she didn't have a vote, then made then Cedric, obviously we see later that he changes his vote. But I feel like it was sad to see that happen though, because I was like, you were so close, Bianca.
Yeah, I know. It was really that would have been such a moment, I think, if that plan had worked. That I would have really loved to see everyone's reactions when they realized there were only 4 votes in there. Like that would have been so much fun to just be like, "Oh my God." Like I mean, but I think it was also the fact that Cedric had told Bianca what happened at the vote a few weeks ago when, Justin ended up going home because
Mhm.
he didn't tell Cedric that he didn't have a vote. And so I think that that was in Bianca's mind where she was like, well, I don't want to make the same mistake that he did. So I think that was part of what got her to actually tell Cedric. But I think I don't know, even if like she had told Cedric like a few hours earlier and given Cedric enough time to like process that and talk to Bianca again after that and like get reassured like hey, this potentially could work moving forward. Like I think like doing that at the last second and not getting to really talk to him again after that maybe was also a mistake.
Yeah, I think it just happened all too late.
Yeah. Well, at Tribal, Cedric and Chrissy end up voting for Bianca, and she is sent home with that because the other 2 votes were not for the same person, so 2 was enough. There were only 4 votes in there, of course. Now, what was curious to me was how did Chrissy know to vote for Bianca?
I was
Now,
about to ask. Yeah.
yeah, because Bianca said in exit interviews, like, I watched Cedric every moment after I told him that I didn't have a vote, and he never talked to Chrissy. So I don't know how that happened. I don't know if they, like, used Morse code. Like, I don't know how Chrissy possibly could have known, but I hope we get an answer for that next episode.
Yeah, no, I'm really curious because I never saw Cedric and Chrissy talking. I mean, obviously, I
Yeah.
thought it could have been edited out, but I don't know. Like, it's just so interesting that she knew, even though, like, I had no idea how she would have found out.
I hope that if we don't get the answer next episode, I need whenever Chrissy has her exit interview, I need them to ask that. Like be like, "Hi, 10 weeks ago, how did you know?" Like nobody will care at that point, but I will be curious.
Yeah. No, it's
So,
important. We need to know.
yes. Well, that was this episode of Survivor. Great episode. Super excited for the merge. I have a hot take potentially that I think that this was the best pre-merge of the new era.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually. I feel like we got to know a lot of the different castaways and saw some really impactful moments and blind sides and all the fun things.
Yeah, it was every episode I think was super unpredictable, very a lot of exciting moments. Like it feels weird to me that this is only the pre-merge because
Yeah.
it feels like these are the types of votes that we generally get post-merge, but we're getting them pre-merge and yeah, I mean, look, we've had some decent pre-merges in the new era, but I just can't remember any where it felt like just banger after banger each week.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how I felt.
Agreed. So we've got a lot more to look forward to this season. If this is how our pre-merge was,
Yeah,
hopefully it gets even better.
I hope
Um,
so.
but now let's discuss Deal or No Deal Island, the finale of season 2, which we saw ends up being the largest amount of any prize pot anyone has won in national television. So that's a big statement.
Yeah. This little show, like I
Yeah.
feel like, I mean, look, Mr. Beast is shaking in his boots.
I know. Wait, how much was his prize pot again?
It was 5 million,
5 million. Yeah.
but there were other like I probably throughout that season. Now, potentially, I mean, I didn't watch the entire season. I haven't watched the last like 4 or 5 episodes of Beast Games, but my understanding is that overall, with all other prizes included, of like bribing people to leave and things like that, I think it was like 15 million total that was given away on that show. So I guess that is technically the title for highest amount of money given away on a reality show, but for a winner, for one person,
Yeah,
I think this is the record.
for sure. So what were your overall thoughts on this season as it compares to season one, or just as a show overall?
I really enjoyed season two. I think that it was different than season one in a lot of ways, but I think that there were a lot of fun characters. A lot of times I feel like when you bring back former reality stars and mix them with new players, the reality stars just completely overshadow the newbies. I feel like we've seen that on like Big Brother from time to time where they do mixed casts, even like Survivor Micronesia, Survivor Caramoan. Like you kind of don't remember maybe more than like one or two of the newbies from those seasons. But here, I feel like we had a lot of fun characters. Like, I mean, Seychelle was great. I need to see her on something else here pretty soon. I mean, in the early days of the season, we had what was her Sydney was a really fun character who I don't think had necessarily the greatest experience in the show, so I don't think we're ever probably going to see her back. But she was fun for the time she was there. And yeah, I mean, like, I just think that it was a really fun dynamic, and it was great to see Parvati again. I will take Parvati anytime we can get her. Dr. Will, I mean, seeing him play a game for the first time since 2006 was pretty amazing and incredible that they were able to get him for this show. And this was my first introduction to David Janot. Ganot, I believe it's pronounced. Sorry if that's wrong. But Golden God from Australian Survivor, who we obviously, spoiler alert, see win the season here. And he is a really, really fun player. I am currently going through Australian Survivor watching it, but I have not yet gotten to any of his seasons. So this was my first introduction to him, but we are going to see him and Parvati both on Australian Survivor AU versus the World coming up later this year. So the fact that we're kind of seeing the origin story of their dynamic here, and then we'll kind of see the continuation of that potentially on there, is really fun. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And this finale had my heart racing the entire episode. What
I
did
know.
you think?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I liked everyone that you mentioned as well, of the cast, and it was fun to see also that they didn't know who David was until like we find out then in the end that he was obviously like who he is as the king of Australian Survivor. But
Golden God.
the Golden God. Yeah,
We have
so
King George. King George is the king of Australian Survivor. David
oh,
is the Golden God.
Golden God. Okay, so they have specific names. Got it.
Yes.
But yeah, but I feel like that was impressive. I mean, obviously we didn't watch him either, but like it was impressive how he was able to like basically get away with that the entire game. And there was only like a few moments that people were like maybe thinking about how he could have been on a show, but no one actually really knew.
Mhm.
And obviously people knew from the beginning about Parvati, so she was in a difficult spot
Some
there.
people knew,
Some people,
but
not
she really, until Dr. Will actually outed her to everyone who didn't already know. But we saw in the first episode, like a few people went up to Parvati and were like, "Yeah, I know who you are." But
yeah.
they apparently like really didn't talk to each other or anyone else until Dr. Will like just outed it to everyone. So she was able to keep it up for a little while, but not as long as David.
Especially also with Dixon and their relationship as like their mini family.
Yeah.
I thought that was cute. And I mean, in the end, it was just David there in the final three with Letty and CK. But I mean, Parvati was just almost there. Like she was so
I
close. It was
know.
sad to see her not win in that final in her last Deal or No Deal game, but it was so close. So I think and throughout the season, like one of my favorite parts of it was just seeing Parvati keep on winning those immunities and overall, like how far she made it because everyone was trying to get her out for so long. For
Yeah.
long. So I was impressed with her, and obviously, like we love seeing her at any show. So I'm excited to see her now in the Survivor Australia against the world. So definitely we'll be watching that so we can get some more Parvati on my screen.
We are 100% covering Australia versus the world, by the way. Like, I don't know. We will find a way to cover that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I mean, that was really incredible that Parvati was immune for 9 weeks in a row. So she almost was immune as long as she could possibly be immune.
Yeah.
1 week short of that. And that was just so heartbreaking because she was just like, it was such a return to form for Parvati. I feel like on the traders, that wasn't quite her speed. Like, I think being a trader, having to play that role wasn't a great fit for Parvati for whatever reason. But I think just having her in this environment with this group, like, it was just, it felt so much like Parvati at her prime that it was really, really fun to watch her in this show. And yeah, I love the family. I mean, I hope that Dixon, they got a babysitter for Dixon for AU versus the world long enough that they can both make it to the end together and he'll be okay. But yeah, I really liked the season.
Me too. And also in the final episode, we had for the last game, they had some eliminated players come back and they had to impact some of the portions of that final excursion. So they were able to kind of determine who those final play who was going to win in the end of being able to play the final game of Deal or No Deal. So, what were your thoughts on that final excursion and that format there?
I really liked it. I thought this was a very interesting way because this show doesn't have a jury in the same way that like Survivor or Big Brother does. And so I always think it's fun when the eliminated players get to have some sort of impact on the final game. And I think this was so much better than like what the Challenge 40 did with the karma points because that was almost too powerful and like that was just so like it really really harmed people's games in a way that wasn't really fair just because of the way the challenge is with people having so much history, some people having so much history with each other, some people not. Like there's just so many factors in there that that gets so messy and unfair in a lot of ways, but here this felt very equal, like very fair. I really enjoyed the fact that we got to see everyone come back and some people interact who, you know, didn't leave on the best of terms and just like it was fun to see those interactions in that way and having people being able to help or hurt them in a way that still gave the current players like a chance to win or you know have the fastest time, pick the best case, determine if somebody's lying to them or not about what the certain cases have in them. So I feel like there was still a good enough way for them to counteract that what could, you know, potentially be unfair of somebody, an eliminated player, just, you know, screwing them over. But it gave those players enough impact in it that it made it very interesting.
Yeah, and they didn't know that that was going to be the case. So I think maybe some people would have played it differently. Like CK was mentioning, like she didn't really make friends throughout the season. That obviously didn't end up helping her in the end because she had the slowest time because people weren't helping her. So with that, I think that was also an interesting factor of it. Like you really didn't know that that was going to be the factor there, but it ended up helping David in the end. Um,
Yeah, and like, sorry, just to,
okay.
before we move on, I was just gonna say, like, I think that we've seen in the past that like there are certain times when once an element like this in the game is introduced, it could negatively impact future seasons potentially in the way of people not being a little bit afraid to screw someone over, being a little bit afraid to make a big move. So I do get a little bit worried about that, but I hope that because season one didn't have an element like this, and you know, maybe I would probably suggest that season three maybe not have quite an element like this, find a different way to bring them back in a way that maybe doesn't. It supports like people being surprised when something like this does happen, so they're not playing the game assuming that it will, if that makes sense. So I hope that this isn't something that they necessarily do in the exact same way every season, because I do think that could potentially make people a little bit afraid to play in a way that's more fun for us, but more dangerous for them.
Yeah, and I don't think they would do it the same way. Like I don't. I feel like they change up these formats a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, so far we've only had 2 seasons, but I feel like we had different formats in the games and stuff like that. That I don't think it would be the same case, but we'll have to see.
And it seemed like the eliminated players, for the most part, respected moves, even if it
Yeah.
got them out. Like, it didn't feel like people held too many grudges. So hopefully that also plays into people not negatively impacting it in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And so the finale episode starts with the cliffhanger since the second to last episode was just them not opening David's last case. So we had to see if it was worth more than 1.8 million for him to win it. And because Letty had already shown us all of her cases. And David does have the 2 million in his last case. So that was enough to get Letty eliminated. And he is the final one going to the final temple and playing Deal or No Deal to try to win as much money as he can.
And he won a lot. No spoilers, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I kind of figured it would be
Yeah.
David. I just feel like this whole was leading up to David being at the end here. So that was my assumption, but Letty also got a good story. So like it wouldn't have been super, well, it would have been a letdown to me, I guess. But like I feel like there was a case to be made that like Letty deserved it. If she got to the end, if she was playing the banker at the end, she absolutely deserved it too. But I just kind of the momentum I felt like was being built up for it to be David.
Yeah, for sure. And I felt bad for Letty though as well because she made it so far and then to lose it
Yeah.
in that moment. Like I saw just a video on TikTok that she was upset because she was basically she thought like some of the old players were like playing her in a way that she didn't know
Mm,
that they were gonna be kind of petty towards her in that way, I guess, and like not give her information that she thought she was gonna get. So I thought that was interesting. I'm interested to hear more if like she has more to share with that final challenge. I think she probably has some thoughts on that because that did end up impacting her ability to win.
yeah, that's interesting because I feel like Parvati I saw in some interview. I'm not sure whether it was the Dondi After Show with Boston Rob or somewhere else because she also has a podcast with someone who is a producer on the show, and they interviewed David on their podcast, which was interesting. I would recommend people going to watch.
Mhm.
But I can't remember where it was that Parvati said this, but it felt like when she got to the I don't know what they call it, but like Ponderosa, they call it on Survivor, like where all the eliminated players stay until the show is over. That she was saying that it felt like so many of them were pro Letty winning
Uh,
that they were like, yeah, the family is they're the villains on the season, and Parvati like didn't really realize that everyone felt that way. So I felt like there was a lot of people that were eliminated who I would have thought were rooting for Letty. So I would have thought that they would have helped her out more than they even helped David. So that's interesting that she felt like people were against the thought of her winning.
yeah, I think it was maybe specifically towards Philip with the case
Hmm.
that she took from him. Um, so maybe it was more just like with one person she was feeling that way with, but
Yeah, he gave her the
uh,
middle, his middle one, is that
yeah,
right? Yeah, but
yeah,
he gave David the
the
biggest one, and
high,
that was the
yeah,
difference there. So yeah, I that is a little bit surprising, but I think that Philip is the type of person who would do that just so he can say he was not bitter, if
yeah,
that makes sense, like bitter towards David.
yeah.
Yeah, like I'm the bigger being the bigger person. You screwed me over, but I'm not going to be bitter towards that. And I feel like it's kind of that reverse psychology almost, that you would assume that Philip would give David the lowest one, but he's going to do the opposite of that so that he can sleep at night.
Yeah. No, that's the case that we were waiting to find out.
Yeah,
Also, it's like, oh, did Philip screw him over, or did he was he trying to be nice and he was being nice?
yeah.
But we ended up seeing in the final temple that everyone except for Sydney is back. And then we watch David play Deal or No Deal, and the final case is worth $12.2 million. So that is one of these cases in the mix here. And We also see that the banker is revealed to be Chrissy Teigen, so she's a former model, a former case model on Deal or No Deal. So that was nice to see her as the banker and a female banker as well. So that
We
was
love female in high power positions.
yes.
But yeah, that was fun. I liked Chrissy being the banker. I kind of assumed that it was going to be either like Chrissy or Meghan Markle or Claudia Jordan, like those people who are formerly associated with Deal or No Deal and have gone on to be household names in some way. So I thought Chrissy, it made a lot of sense also because John Legend's on The Voice, an NBC show, so there's kind of that synergy there already. So I feel like this makes total sense for it to be Chrissy, and yeah, I was happy that it was her. It made sense.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, there's a lot at stake for this game. David ends up picking the case number 18 as his case, and we see him go through a lot of deals, which
Yeah,
this is
let's kind of
why,
go through them. Like,
yeah.
where would we have stopped? Is I
Okay.
think the question.
Okay, that's a good question. I honestly, like, as I was watching it, I also didn't know.
Yeah, I
How,
don't know that I know either.
yeah, but David, spoiler alert, I mean, you should know at this point, but he does win $5.8 million dollars is what he ends up with. But before that, he had 3.87 million, and before that, he had 2.9, and before that, he had 1.9. So, like, he was already over $1 million at his
Yeah,
fifth one. So, like,
crazy.
it was wild how fast he got up. Or a fourth one. Fourth, he got up 1.5 million.
Hmm.
So he had really high offers. I think honestly, I might have stopped at the 1.5. Maybe like once it got over the
Yeah,
1 million, I
yeah.
think I would have stopped. But good on David that he felt good that he was gonna keep going and get as much as he could, and it was the best deal because he ends up opening his case was the lowest value or not. Well, he had left. He had only two cases left. One was his, one was left, and his case was the low $75, and the other case remaining was the 12 million. So he obviously made the best deal there. And as we said before, it's the most money anyone in network TV has won from a reality show. So it was a big amount of money, and I'm happy for him. And obviously, it's going to be life changing. So he deserves it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't think I would have stopped before the 1.5 just because at that point there were still so many like $1 million on the board left that I think I would be like, okay, there's enough of a safety net here that if I don't take this and I get however, because I think probably at that point they were picking like maybe two cases at a time, something like that.
Mhm.
There would have at least been like one or two of those millions still left on the board at the very least to where the offer wouldn't be like
Yeah.
$300. Like the offer still would have been high enough that I could have been like at that point, okay, maybe the offer went down, but it's still high enough that I can win this and feel like it wasn't a complete waste of time and like regret this for the rest of my life. Like I would have still gotten a certainly life-changing amount of money. So, yeah, I think the 1.5 though, that's probably where I would have stopped. Even if I decided like to go one more and go to the 1.9, there's no way I'm not taking 1.9. Like that is plenty. I could live at night if like, know with myself knowing that even if I had the 12 million in my case, I still got a heck of a lot of money. And that to
Yeah.
me, I can't even imagine saying no deal to that.
I know. It was crazy also seeing everyone's reactions of like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? Like, why is he saying no deal to these? But it ended up working out. So he
Now
was
here's
feeling the
my
whole.
question. Do you think that the network wanted David to continue saying no deal so that they could get to a point where he potentially gets the highest amount ever won in network history and or at least gets such a high amount that they can promote this as being like the highest amount ever won on Deal or No Deal? Or do you think they wanted him to take it at the 1.5, 1.9 because NBC doesn't have that much money for them to win. Like I don't think they ever expected it to get where it did. And NBC Universal is having to now pay out $5.8 million on a show that, like, is doing okay, but not doing the most amazing ratings wise, where they have all this money to spare. But which way do you think they wanted this to go?
I mean, I don't think they would have wanted him to get that 5.8 overall, obviously, if they didn't even really have that budgeted for the show. Like, I think they probably were aiming him to get more in the 1.5 range. But it's impressive. And now they can advertise it as that he's won the most money. So I don't know. It's interesting because, I mean, it's obviously like they can't expect that because he just did so well in the last Deal or No Deal. Like no one has ever done that well, so it's a crazy amount, but it ended up working.
Yeah, I really do not think that they ever wanted to actually pay out this amount of money. I think that they love being able to say, like, there is potentially tens of millions of dollars up for grabs on this show, but only have to pay out maybe 1 million to the winner. Like last season's winner got, I think, approximately 1 million, just over a million, I think, maybe. And that was about right. Like, that's, I think, where they kind of expected this to go probably on most seasons. That's about what people are going to take. Once it gets to like just over a million, most people are probably going to say it's not worth the risk, take it. And I think that's probably what they expected here. Like, I think the fact that they even at the 3.8 amount ended it with the 18, so that I think that was a sign for David to be like, please take this. This has the number 18 in it at the end. We did this for you. It's your lucky number. Please take this. And he didn't. He ended up, and it's just so crazy because he had the 75 in his case. At any moment, that 12 million could have been picked at any moment. And it's just so crazy. It wasn't like that was what he picked and then it was always going to stay on the board. He just so happened to never pick that case. And that is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, no, actually, it was crazy. I mean, it's good he didn't get the seven case then, I guess, because then he would have won. If he didn't take it that deal, he could have won the
Yeah.
12 million. I don't know. I don't think that would have happened, but like he
So
was
he has
basically
said, and I don't know, like I think actually this is true because I don't think they showed this, but they ended up kind of playing it out to say like, okay, would you have? Because at the end of Deal or No Deal, you can either switch your
swap.
case or keep it. And he, before he knew which one was in which, he said he wanted to swap it. And so if he had said no deal, he probably would have won the 12 million.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I feel like he would have swapped it at that point.
Yeah,
So that is crazy. He could have gotten even more money.
crazy, crazy. But like at that point, like, okay, what is the difference if you win $6 million or 12 million? Like, what is going to change in your life at that point? Like, I feel like he's probably going to live about the same way with this winning this much as he would have if he had won 12 million.
Yeah, that's fair. He can buy another house.
Yeah, yeah, buy a house in America. Then
Yeah.
that way you can much more easily do a bunch of other American reality shows, which I hope he does.
Yes, I know. He was great to watch, so I hope we see him again. I mean, we'll
He's
see him
fun.
on Australian Survivor, but other than
Yeah,
that,
no, I'm excited. I'm definitely going to go back and he's been on two Australian Survivor seasons, so I'm going to at least go back and watch one of them before AU versus the World starts. If I have time, I'll watch both. But I am excited to see him on there now that familiar with him on here. And then, of course, yeah, I mean, AU versus the World, super excited for that. And I'll be interested to see. I mean, assuming that they were going to start off on different tribes, him and Parvati, because I believe it is one AU Survivor tribe versus World tribe of all other international versions. So I assume they will start out on different tribes, but I hope that they both make it to the merge, or that maybe because it's a smaller cast, maybe they'll do some kind of like one world twist thing where they both tribes start on the same beach. I don't know, but I certainly hope that we get to see them interact at some point because I think that'll be very interesting.
yes, me too. And do you have any hopes for next season or anything you wish they changed?
So I posted that I was like, okay, after this finale next season, they are going to range the Deal or No Deal board from 10 cents to $10. Like they at this point have no budget left. So I don't know if we're gonna get a third season. Like, I mean, the finale did pretty well ratings wise, so I think like maybe that could have potentially kind of been the bump they needed to get another season, but Oof. I mean, the fact that now the network really fully understands how much this show can potentially hurt them financially, I don't know. I just don't know whether they'll be able to come back or not. But if they do, I hope that we get to see. I think that this is perfect in the way that they have like two or three known faces on a season. I think that's perfect and it keeps it different from something like Traders where that's the full cast or, this new Got to Get Out show on Hulu where it's like half and half. Like, I think this is kind of a nice thing where it's like, okay, just a couple per season. That way, if this continues season after season after season, they're not quickly running out of known exciting names for us. So, someone like Cerie, someone like Sandra, there's a bunch of Survivor, Big Brother legends that they can have for future seasons that I think would be really fun to see. So, I hope that we continue kind of pretty much on the same route because I really did enjoy this season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do about the budget stuff, but I mean, I like this show, and I think the format has worked of how they've been doing it so far, and so I think they could continue pretty much the same way, just with this same way they do the like, some known people and then mostly not known people, and it works well for this kind of dynamic. So I'm hoping we get a season three, but we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think like I will say, if this Deal or No Deal game had not been as exciting as it was for this finale, the finale probably would have been pretty boring. Because I don't necessarily really care how much they win unless it's an extremely high amount or like an extremely low amount, I guess would be like heartbreaking, but like interesting. So I feel like and I mean last season's finale, I guess because the Deal or No Deal game didn't go so long, I don't think it was the full episode like this was. So I think they understand that and like if it's not going to be this exciting, they'll push something that was in the previous episode. They would have probably pushed it into this episode. But yeah, I think that as long as they realize that the Deal or No Deal part technically usually is the weakest part of the show, I think like let's shorten that maybe a little bit from most times and extend other elements of it. But otherwise, other than that, yeah, it's a really really fun show.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, also, I was just thinking about how you said in the beginning of the episode, also, or they mentioned they made a joke about Luke. I don't know when it was in the
Yeah,
episode because he got $1
it's $1.
last in the first episode of the season. So we went from the lowest amount anyone has ever gotten to the highest
Yeah.
amount.
Look at that.
Full
Look at
circle.
that. Look at how we bookend the season from one extreme to the other. That's fun. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So we started from the bottom, then we went to the top.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Yep. All right. Well, that's it for today's episode of Let's Chat Reality. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you got your podcasts and you're following us on social media, on Blue Sky, as well as
Yes.
on TikTok and Instagram. And we'll be back next week to chat more reality TV with y'all. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye, everyone.